Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I am Mike Barner. He is Kirien Sprecher, and we come to you every Wednesday to give you the information that you need to win your fantasy basketball leagues. Kirien, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man. How about you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Now, we've got a fun show. We're going to do our usual news and notes here off the top, but in our second segment, it is all for you. We are going to answer any questions that you may have for fantasy basketball. So flood the chat. We've got lots of time to answer questions. But before we do that, Kirien, let's talk about some news and notes from across the league. We had a big marquee matchup last night. Celtics, Nuggets. Downside, not everybody played. Nikola Jokic was out with an illness. Aaron Gordon was out with a calf injury. And Dereck White was also out with an illness. The Celtics won 118-106. It was just the fourth missed game of the season for Jokic. Gordon has missed 7 straight games. With those two out, Dario Saric, the corpse that is Dario Saric, started. He played 17 minutes, 0 points, and 1 rebound. Put him back on ice. That didn't go well for Dario Saric. But Peyton Watson, he had 14 points. He played 34 minutes. Julian Strawther, 19 points, 27 minutes. Russell Westbrook, 26 points. 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 8 turnovers over 33 minutes. On the Celtics side of things, we had Porzingis had 25 points. Jason Tatum scored 29 points despite shooting 1 of 9 on three-pointers. But Kirien, we had some injuries here, put a little damper on this marquee matchup. Nuggets surprisingly held in this for a while considering Jokic was out, but a good game.
Yeah, absolutely a good game. And obviously the Celtics are way more equipped to win a game without one of their starting 5 than the Nuggets are at this point in the season. But as the great Davante Adams once said, wash your hands, wash your butts, man. This illness, whatever it is ravaging the NBA. If you look at injury reports daily, teams left and right have multiple guys with illnesses, missing games because of illnesses. Obviously White and Jokic both missed because of an illness, and the Nuggets play again tonight, and we don't know if Jokic is going to play. So this illness is definitely a huge storyline in fantasy right now. My biggest takeaway from this game is: are we starting to worry about Peyton Pritchard in fantasy? Like he was basically a must start in most leagues, maybe not like a 10-team league. But last 2 games, he's totaled only 3 points. He's 1 for 11 from the field, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. He was averaging 16 points, 4 boards, 3.5 dimes, and a steal, and playing 29 minutes per game before these last 2 games. I was really expecting more from him with Dereck White out. Is Peyton Pritchard still the guy he was at the beginning of the season, or have I overreacting to these 2 games?
Wasn't one of your New Year's resolutions is you weren't going to overreact? Well, your resolution was you weren't going to overreact to 1 game. So technically this is 2. You haven't broken your resolution.
You called me out. You called me out. That's fair. That's fair.
Hey, we got to help each other achieve our fantasy basketball resolutions. So I would say that Pritchard is probably like most bench players in the NBA, where there is going to be stretches where they're hot as can be. And then there's also going to be stretches where there's cold. It's not easy being a bench player in the NBA, no matter how good you are. Even one of the best ones like Jordan Clarkson, he has 2 weeks where he's on fire, and then he has a week where he stinks, and it happens. Pritchard's definitely not someone I'd be dropping or panicking about. But, yeah, I think there's going to be ebbs and flows, just like any bench guy.
Yeah, he had probably been making it look too easy early in the season, right? Overexceeded expectations, and now he's kind of going back to the norm. Yeah.
Now, we did have a bit of good injury news last night. Zion Williamson made his return for the Pelicans. He started, and he played 28 minutes right off the bat, which was very encouraging. 22 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and 1 block. He shot 9 for 15 from the field. The downside was Trey Murphy did not play for the Pelicans. He was out with an ankle injury. I believe it's considered a minor injury, so he might not miss much time, if at any more. But the great news is Zion Williamson is back for fantasy basketball managers.
Absolutely. And the athleticism was there. He had an alley-oop. He had a windmill 360. I also like that he was really efficient from the field. Zion also had 4 stocks, 3 steals, and a block. So his activity level was really high. He played a lot of minutes. I'm assuming he's going to sit tonight in the second half of a back-to-back. But fantasy managers, myself included, have to be really, really encouraged with what we saw from Zion last night. but the Pelicans still lost. It's like we don't, even when they get BI back, and these guys still hopefully are putting up numbers, I don't expect the Pelicans to really make a dent in this hole that they dug themselves in.
All right, another guy that we're very excited about, but unfortunately this is bad news. Jalen Johnson did not play Tuesday against the Jazz. He's missed 3 of the last 4 games for the Hawks. The next game for the Hawks is on Thursday against the Suns. I don't think there's a real must-add here, but man, I have Jalen Johnson on too many teams. I think. Well, you can't have him on too many teams, but I have him on too many teams for him to be hurt. So I don't like this right now, Kieran.
Yeah, absolutely not. What we want to see from a young guy that dealt with a lot of injuries last season. Obviously, last season it was a wrist thing and then an ankle thing. This is a shoulder issue. We don't have any additional information for you guys. He's missed 3 of 4. We just got to proceed with caution. He missed 1. He came back and then he sat out the front half of a back-to-back. So I was like, oh, maybe it's just a minor thing. This latest absence is moved that caution needle to the yellow for sure. We're not quite in the red, but definitely proceed with caution here.
Kyle Kuzma left yesterday's game against the Rockets with a calf injury. He did not return. Jordan Poole also didn't play in that game. We were finally starting to see Kuzma play more. He had 28 points in Sunday's game against the Pelicans. Wizards are probably not going to risk anything with him health-wise as they try to trade him. Poole has missed 4 of the last 6 games for the Wizards. Anybody you're excited about on the Wizards right now, Kieran? We got too many injuries here.
Yeah, I mean, we should know not to expect too much from Kyle Kuzma at this point. You mentioned he had the one good game. That was basically his only really good game in 5 outings since returning from a month-long injury, right? I look at if Kuzma's going to miss time, if Poole's going to miss time, I think that means more opportunities for Bilal Coulibaly. He's probably not available in many leagues, but if you want to buy low on him, he had a really hot start to the season, kind of has been so-so since then. But I think he's one of those guys on a non-contending team once Kuzma gets traded or, he just stays on the injury report for forever. Once Washington makes some moves, I think Coulibaly's a guy that could really explode towards the second half of the season.
We go from one bad team to another. The Jazz, the Utah Jazz are dealing with quite a few injuries right now. Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, and Keontae George have all missed time recently. Clarkson has a torn plantar fascia in his left foot. He's out at least 2 weeks. Collins has missed 7 of the last 8 games. Right now, he's dealing with a personal matter. George has missed 6 of the last 9 games. What we do like on the Jazz, Walker Kessler averaging 12.3 points, 12.5 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks over the last 6 games. The bigger stat averaged 31 minutes over those 6 games. Another guy, Bryce Sensabaugh. Now, he was out sick Tuesday. However, he scored at least 20 points in 3 of the last 5 games. Kieran, the Jazz here are going to be cautious with guys with injuries, especially veterans that they would probably like to trade. So are you excited about Sensabaugh? Obviously, we're excited about Walker Kessler. We're Team Walker Kessler on this podcast. But what about Sensabaugh?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sensabaugh was one of the hottest pickups coming into this week in fantasy. He had the big weekend and now he sits out with an illness, classic fantasy, storyline. But I think he's definitely one of these guys. I think Collins dealing with this personal matter, missing a bunch of games, probably going to get traded, has been the storyline with John Collins for like 6 years now, no matter what team he's playing for. But yeah, I'm all in on Sensabaugh. And like you said, similar to Washington, Utah is going to bench these veteran guys any chance they can get, whatever minor injury they're dealing with, so that they can give guys like Sensabaugh, Kessler, Micah Potter for a lesser extent, give these guys some opportunities to get some PT while they also improve their chances for Cooper Flagg. Like that's obviously the biggest part of this equation here. That teams like Washington and Utah want Cooper Flagg. They feel like he could be a premier player for them, and teams that don't really have a premier guy. Like we love Walker Kessler. I'm all for Walker Kessler, but he's not a face of a franchise guy.
Man, listen, don't say anything bad about Walker Kessler. That is highly frowned upon, Kieran. Highly frowned upon. Jeez.
Face of a franchise for my fantasy team that leads the league in blocks for sure.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Another center. Let's talk about a different center. Daniel Gafford. He did not play Tuesday against the Lakers with an ankle injury. The concern here looks like Gafford could miss multiple games with that injury. Now, Dereck Lively, Seems like he was going to be great. Wrong. Not last night, at least. Foul trouble. Not
Yeah.
easy for him against Anthony Davis. He only played 19 minutes. Still 7 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists, so we like that. But overall, we got a big boost to Lively with Gafford out here. What we did like last night, Quentin Grimes exploded. 23 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 6 3-pointers, 29 minutes. He has dished out exactly 6 assists in 3 straight games. Quentin Grimes is available in 76% of Yahoo leagues. Kirien, must add Quentin Grimes, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I know, since Luka's gone out and now Kyrie is also injured for multiple weeks. We've been talking about this trio, right? Spencer Dinwiddie, Quentin Grimes, maybe a little Jaden Hardy, right, thrown in there. And sometimes it's Spencer Dinwiddie being he's the must add. Sometimes it's Grimes. Jaden Hardy, I've said he's the mystery box of the trio. I think Grimes has kind of solidified himself as like the most consistent option of that group. Obviously Dinwiddie is starting and playing a lot of minutes, but that production comes and goes with him, as we've talked about. Grimes has just been really solid. He hits a couple threes, he drops a handful of dimes, grabs a couple boards here and there. I think he's probably the most trustworthy option of these guys that need to step up in the absence of Luka and Kyrie.
Yeah, what you like about Grimes and Dinwiddie is they can contribute in multiple categories. They're not just like the thing with Hardy is he's like a scorer.
Yeah.
So I don't know he's going to give you much outside other things, but with Grimes and Dinwiddie, they can give you better overall production. So yeah, those are 2 guys definitely want to add. Now, here's a shocker. Stop the presses. Joel Embiid's going to miss another game. Oh, I know you're all just as surprised as Kirien and I are. He is out for tonight's game against the Wizards. Paul George also out. He has a groin injury. This is not part of a back-to-back set. So this is not we're resting him on one half. Maybe this is we don't want either of our veterans to play against the putrid Wizards. So we could be looking at this situation right there. George, he played in 14 straight games.
Yeah.
So probably the 76ers are just being cautious with him. But the thing here is, man, even on non-back-to-back sets, so we already know Embiid's not going to play both games at back-to-back sets. Are the 76ers also not going to play him against bad teams? He's frustrating the roster.
That theory is always interesting. Like, if you're going to have a guy like Embiid, wouldn't you rather have him play against a team that like you can win with him there, right? And then bench him against a team that like you probably won't be able to win either way. I don't know. You could get into the weeds with the planning and strategy, strategery, as Sean Connery on SNL would say. But it's weird. You mentioned George had been played in a bunch of games in a row. This is going to be his first absence since December 4th. But during that stretch, he scored 20-plus points only once in his last 10 games. So, like, yes, he has been available, but he has definitely not given the Sixers what they expected when they signed him this offseason. And Embiid, all I can say is he's been productive when he's been healthy. He's played in 9 of the last 13. He's posted 26 points, 8 boards, 4 assists, 1 steal, and a block in 29 minutes when he's been out there. You can't trust him to play as expected, but you can trust him to put up numbers when he is out on the court.
Tyrese Haliburton is questionable tonight against the Chicago Bulls with an ankle injury. He has not missed a game this season. Might play tonight. Reason why I wanted to bring this up, this is an alert for everybody who plays DFS. If Haliburton is out, you must start TJ McConnell against the Bulls and their putrid defense. Right, Kirien?
Yeah, absolutely. I love TJ McConnell. He had huge spurts of fantasy relevance last season when Haliburton was dealing with the hamstring stuff. That was well documented. We don't need to get too much into that. But Haliburton's been really healthy this season. We've talked about his road home splits. He's actually gotten the last like 3 or 4 performances on the road have been really encouraging. So this is a tough blow for a guy that was trending in the right direction. He might not even miss, but still, like, the fact that his production kind of dropped off when he tried to play through the hamstring injuries last year kind of has me a little concerned that his production might drop a little if he tries to push through this ankle injury. So, and the Pacers are probably privy to that. They're a smart organization. They also have a great backup point guard, like you said. So it wouldn't surprise me if they gave Haliburton some time to get back to 100% before they throw him back out there.
I almost want to see TJ McConnell play 30 minutes against the Bulls just because, could he provide a triple-double? I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't. It'd be interesting.
we can do our Bulls minute right now. We can do it later, whatever.
Bulls minute, do it.
Watching
Kirien.
Nikola Vucevic try to guard Wemby the other night.
Oh my God,
he couldn't guard.
They put him in pick and roll, and Chris Paul ate him alive. Chris Paul is 150 years old, and Vucevic looked like he was stuck in quicksand. He couldn't move.
I don't think anybody matches up well against Wemby, but Nikola has to easily be in the top 5 worst matchups.
Oh my God. Chris Paul, he was salivating. You could see the drool coming off of his face. They just kept putting Vucevic in the pick and roll, and as soon as they would come off Chris Paul was nailing all those mid-range shots. Oh, it was embarrassing.
Oh, it's so bad.
And with that, the Bulls minute has concluded. Now, let's talk about a back injury for Jeremy Sochan. We don't like back injuries. He is out for tonight's game against the Bucks. He also missed a game last week with that same back injuries. Back injuries are tricky. Boost for Jalen Johnson here as Sochan missed his time. But I also want to use this as an opportunity to talk about Devin Vassell. Some good. Devin Vassell is averaging 34 minutes over the last 8 games. With all his injury history, for him to play that much, that's awesome. The bad. During those 8 games, he only averaged 14.3 points and shot 37.8% from the field. He is providing rebounds and assists and steals. What do you think? I mean, you can put some insight about Sochan. Back injuries are tricky. We've talked about Sochan before. What do you think about Vassell, Kirien? Is this a buy low opportunity for him? Because the playing time is good. It's just the shooting is bad.
Yeah, I think if you can make a move for Vassell right now, you absolutely should. I have him rostered in one league. It's my biggest stakes league. Obviously had to deal with him the injuries to start the season, and I thought that when he came back, we would see a little bit of a minutes restriction. But I thought he was going to explode. We haven't really seen that yet. You imagine that, like, being that second, third option behind Wemby and Chris Paul, like, he would get a bunch of open looks. I think an explosion is coming eventually. I think he's as good as, I want to say as good as any guard, but I don't really believe that. I think he's like in that tier 2, tier 3 of guards. But if you I would much rather have Vassell moving forward than a guy like Keontae George or Colin Sexton. I think Vassell has a way higher upside, especially because the Spurs are, I'm not good. The Spurs are good this year. I mean, they play in the West is really tough, and they're playing for a play-in spot. They're much improved. And that gives me confidence that, like, as the season goes on, Vassell isn't going to get many. They're not going to try to rest him. They're not going to try to hold him back. They're going to see what he can do. And I have high expectations for him. We'll see if he can reach those.
Before we start getting into everybody's questions, we've got to look out because the tank is coming. The Brooklyn Nets have ruled out everybody. Okay. If you're any good, you're not playing. D'Angelo Russell, Cam Thomas, and Cam Johnson are all out for Wednesday's game against the Pistons. Ben Simmons is listed as questionable. We got to trade Nick. If you have Nick Claxton in fantasy basketball and you get anything for him, it's time to trade him. Some guys maybe we should add because none of the good guys on the Nets are playing. Keon Johnson is averaging 14.9 points, 4.8 rebounds, 1.6 steals, and 2.1 3-pointers over the last 8 games. He is available in 86% of Yahoo leagues. Zaire Williams is averaging 12.3 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 2.7 3-pointers over 3 games since returning from injury. He is available in 94% of Yahoo leagues. As we try to avoid getting crushed by the Nets tank, Kirien, who are you looking for on the waiver wire?
This is I probably shouldn't say this. It's not a good answer. But I have no idea. I do. The only thing I know is that one of those guys that you mentioned is probably going to help a lot of people win fantasy championships this year. I just don't know which one it's going to be. And if you are debating between all of those guys, it probably means that they're all going to somewhat limit each other's fantasy values, at least moving forward. But I have a hunch that someone's going to emerge out of Brooklyn. Right now, my best bet is Keon Johnson. He seems to have, a high upside, but he's also like one of the more consistent guys. But Zaire Williams he shows a lot of flashes, and then Jalen Wilson sometimes is here and there. I don't know. That's probably a terrible answer. People can roast me in the chat, but I do know that one of these guys is going to make a huge impact in the fantasy playoffs.
Just know as those fantasy playoffs approach and we're past the trade deadline, Kirien and I will make sure you have the right guys from the Nets on your roster. We will be all over this. We have to find something exciting in Brooklyn, and we are going to find some of these fantasy darlings for the playoffs.
And it should emerge more. Like, and I say that now because, I want to say Keon Johnson, but then when Ben Simmons and, D'Angelo Russell are playing, probably not Keon Johnson, right? But I don't expect Cameron Johnson. I don't expect these guys to be on the team come, in a month from now, right? So things are going to change. I'm not going to say I don't know and then not, continue to look into it. I'm just saying that right now it's just too muddled for me to pick one of these guys and say this is my guy moving forward in Brooklyn.
All right, it's time to answer questions. Now, I love seeing all these ones in the chat. I did put out the call on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call that thing. And I got some questions on there too. So let's answer a few of those questions first, and then we're going to pile through all these lovely questions in the chat. We're going to try and do this fairly quickly. So I got a question from Phil G on Twitter. Would you trade Donovan Mitchell for DeJounte Murray, DeMar DeRozan, and Dennis Schroeder in a 9-category league? Kirien, a lot of names there. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I mean, this all depends on where you are in the standings, Phil, right? Like, obviously, if you're doing a 3-for-1 trade, that probably means, or if you're interested in a 3-for-1 trade, that probably means you're dealing with some injuries and you're trying to trade one of your top contributors in Donovan Mitchell to bolster your depth. And if that's the case, then I feel like you probably have to do this. Like, if you're just struggling to fill out a full roster on a weekly basis, you probably need to make this trade because 3-for-1, you're getting a lot of value there. But if you're trying to win a championship, I don't think DeJounte Murray, DeMar DeRozan, and Dennis Schroeder are going to help you win a fantasy championship. I think they're going to help you stay afloat and maybe get you into the playoffs while you get healthy. But I think Donovan Mitchell is the guy that you want to have in this group of 4. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I actually like the trade. I'm taking Schroeder out of the equation because he's borderline rosterable. So to me, this is, would you trade Donovan Mitchell for DeJounte Murray and DeMar DeRozan? And I think I would. DeRozan, he's down this year, but he's still getting you points. Murray is doing a lot, rebounds, assists, and steals. His field goal percentage is down. That should come up. Also, DeRozan usually shoots for a high percentage, so that should balance that out a little bit. So I like the trade, and I would do it. I have no problem with it.
Yeah, anytime you're getting 3 guys for 1 guy, the value's there. That's like the value's there.
Now, this is a more straightforward trade. This is from Wes Yap on Twitter. I apologize if I'm going to butcher it. These aren't all handles either, because some of these handles, I have no idea what they are or what they mean. So I'm trying to make this as best as I can. So he had a question. Would you trade C.J. McCollum and Mark Williams for Rudy Gobert and Klay Thompson? I'll take this first. I would not, because I think Klay Thompson is borderline rosterable. He's basically points and 3-pointers. That's not all that appealing. What I like here, last 10 games for Rudy Gobert, averaging 9.3 points, 10.4 rebounds, and 1.9 blocks. Mark Williams, 13.6 points, 8.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists, and 1.1 blocks. The injuries are a concern for Williams. Gobert has the higher floor. However, I think the difference between McCollum and Thompson is much greater than the difference between Gobert and Williams. So I would rather have McCollum and Mark Williams. How about you, Kirien?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to stay as far away from Klay Thompson as I can, even with Kyrie and Luka hurt, more usage potentially. But also, he can't, he's just not a great player right now. He can show flashes, but he's not contributing in winning ways, and he doesn't really contribute in fantasy the way that we need him to. There was an ugly video going around of LeBron's, his right to left hand incredible windmill dunk last night, and that entire possession where the Lakers got like 3 offensive rebounds, Klay took like 4 steps. Like, come on, man, don't you got your Fitbit on or something? You got to get those steps in. I'm staying far away as I can from Klay Thompson. So like you said, Mark Williams, Rudy Gobert. Mark Williams is playing pretty well. So that's kind of a wash, but CJ McCollum over Klay here, that's pretty easy for me.
All right, this is from Mike Mox. What do we do with OG Anunoby in a 10-team, 9-category head-to-head league? Now, what I like here, it's a shallow league. So 10 teams. That does help a little bit when it comes to injured players, because if they get injured, there's usually better players on the waiver wire. The crazy thing, OG Anunoby is averaging 37 minutes a game and has not missed a game this season. If you had told me that, I would have called you crazy. I am completely surprised by this. I would trade him. What would you do, Kirien?
Yeah, I mean, you look at his overall rank this season in category leagues, and he's still a top 50 guy. Like, he's still a pretty solid player. It's been rough over the last couple of weeks. A lot of single-digit scoring performances. 4 over the last 8 games, he's been in single digits. He's been outside the top 100 over the last 2 weeks. So I get a little bit of panic here. And if you really need to make a move, you should try to make a move. But I think you're not dropping OG Anunoby at this point, unless there's, a huge mistake was made on the waiver wire and you can pick up like Kawhi or Zion or something. Like, I just don't see someone being on the waiver wire. It is a shallow league, but overall his work this season has been really solid. So I think I'm going to stick with OG at least for a couple more weeks.
All right. This is going to be our last from Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Justin Party asked, is GG Jackson worth picking up when he returns? Now, Jackson should be back at some point in January. The Grizzlies are pretty thin right now. Still, unless you're in a 14-team or deeper league, I wouldn't add him. I don't think he's probably going to be eased back into things. And their front court's not in the worst shape.
No.
Their back court's hammered right now. But Edey, Clark, guys like that are all healthy. Jaren Jackson Jr., Aldama might even be back by the time Jackson comes back. So if you're 14-team or deeper, sure. But 12, 10, no.
Yeah, Gigi, he just went to the G League to get a practice in, so he is ramping up. He should be close. I'm with you. He's probably not worth a pickup. Just because, and another thing is Jalen Wells has been fantastic. Like, arguably Jalen Wells could be the rookie of the year. So I don't think they're going to really mess with that formula. I think Jalen Wells is a much better defender. And the Grizzlies got scoring with Ja whenever he plays and Desmond Bane when he plays and Jaren Jackson. So I think Gigi he'll come off the bench. He'll have a role, but he's not going to have the role that he had last year when he was a fantasy star for the second half of the season.
All right, and now we go to the chat for all these. Thank you, everyone, for these questions. There's a lot of questions in here, and there's a lot of good ones. So, Kirien, let's start blowing through these.
All right, here we go. P-Dub to start us off. Good morning, guys. Who do I drop to activate Paolo? Tyus Jones, I'm believing, Herbert Jones, or Dante DiVincenzo? What do you say, Mike?
Herbert, simply because Zion's back, and then once Trey Murphy probably doesn't miss a ton of time.
Yeah.
Messi's played so well, so it'd be Herb for me, no question.
And Dante is starting now, and so we might see the big Ragu in his full form soon. And Tyus Jones, I like his consistency with assists. He's not going to score a bunch, but he gets a lot of assists playing in that offense, so I agree. Embiid, Scoot Henderson, and Kamara for DeRozan, Westbrook, and Mark Williams. Good deal or no? On the surface, I feel like it's a good deal. The guy who offered, or the guy or gal who offered that to you, probably is just get Joel Embiid off of my team as soon as possible. So that's interesting. If you don't trust Mark Williams, I think this is a no-brainer because you also can't trust Joel Embiid. What do you say? What do you think, Mike?
I am not putting Joel Embiid on any of my teams. If I were to take him, it'd have to be for fringe guys, and DeRozan and Mark Williams are not fringe guys for me. So I wouldn't do it. I'll start off by saying this. Is this a fair trade offer?
Yeah.
Yes, it's fair. But personally, I don't want to Embiid on any of my teams, so I wouldn't do it.
I would agree, and I feel like the person offering this trade would triple that.
Yes.
What's up, gentlemen? What do we think about Brandon Miller for Jalen Green and Jalen Suggs? Got offered that in a 12-team. Jalen Suggs' back injury right now kind of has me concerned. The Magic are playing it off, saying it's day-to-day. It's only back spasms, but that looked really bad. He non-contact, back tightened up, and he just fell to the ground and had to be wheelchaired out. But he has been fantastic this season. Lots of steals, and then you add into the equation Paolo and Franz might come back soon. Like I said, when you get 2 for 1 or 3 for 1, the value's here. So I think there's value in Jalen Green and Jalen Suggs. But I think Brandon Miller might be the best player out of this group right now. I'm not really sure. What do you think, Mike?
To me, this is a very, very close trade. The deciding factor for me is what happens if Brandon Miller gets a nagging injury and the Hornets continue to stink. Now, Jalen Green and Jalen Suggs are on two teams, young teams, fighting for top playoff spots. I think they're safer. Now, neither of them has the ceiling that Brandon Miller does, but I think they're safer. I like the 2-for-1. That's the deciding factor for me. I would trade Brandon Miller for those two.
Yeah, I think the 2-for-1 value is there. Jalen Green's on a hot streak right now, so you could, even if Jalen Suggs misses a week or two, you could make an argument that you're not really losing that much with starting Jalen Green over Brandon Miller. So I think the 2-for-1 there is a good value. All right, Damian Santiago says, hello, guys. Being offered Jarrett Allen for Hartenstein, 12-team ESPN points. What are your thoughts? Thank you.
10-team says there. 10-team, first of all.
Nice.
Let's make sure we get that straight.
Yeah, I would have to do a deep dive. Hartenstein is one of my favorite guys in the league to watch, and he just racks up stats like no other.
I think this is about floor and ceiling. Right now, Hartenstein's putting up awesome production, but Chet Holmgren's out. What does his production look like when Chet Holmgren comes back? Jarrett Allen's floor is steady. He's not going to have the upside that Hartenstein does because he doesn't give you the assists, but his floor is so high. This is a pretty close move. Personally, I would take Allen to remove the uncertainty of what is Hartenstein's stat line is going to look like once Chet Holmgren comes back. But it's close, and I won't fault you either way.
I think that's fair. I think I'll agree with you on that one. All right, Aunt G. Hey, guys, I need to drop 2 Claxton, Aldama, Sarr, or Keon Ellis category leagues. Thanks. I mean, you already mentioned Claxton earlier. These other guys, though, they're not, Santi's dealing with the injury. Gigi Jackson might come back. Sarr, I think Sarr is probably you want to keep him just because it's a category league and the blocks there are just fantastic. Keon Ellis, similarly, his steals are really strong. But Keon Ellis is kind of only popping right now with De'Aaron Fox out. Maybe the coaching change in Sacramento means that Keon's going to play more in the second half. This is tough. I think Aldama is my first drop, but I'm not sure who the second drop would be. How about you?
I would drop Keon Ellis simply because I don't think he's going to provide you enough across the board. Aldama probably just because he's hurt. But, man, can you trade Nick Claxton first?
Yeah.
Can you trade him for some? Take 2 of those guys and put them together. Even if you get somebody like Tobias Harris, you get somebody who's useful and you clear a roster spot. Maybe try something like that first. Put Claxton with Keon Ellis. Maybe you can get like Tobias Harris, someone of that level. I would try that.
Yeah, and like I said, I really like Keon, but I think he's just popping right now because of the Fox stuff, and this might not. You can't really trust it going to the end of the season. All right, moving forward, we got Derek. He says, I was offered Bane for Zion in a 9-cat head-to-head league. You guys would prefer Zion, right? Or prefer Bane, right? Zion staying healthy rest of the season scares me. Absolutely. Bane has some injury concerns of his own. But this is the classic injury prone guy on a tanking team and a solid starter on a competing team. So I think we roll with Bane here. What about you, Mike?
Agreed. We can move on to the next one.
Cool. All right. Christian Rogers. Is Max Strus a hold in 12-14 team leagues? We had a similar, I filled in for Alex with Nick on the pod on Monday, and we had a similar question. A lot of Max Strus questions recently. Dean Wade's still starting. Isaac Okoro is going to be back pretty soon. Strus, I like Strus. I think he can be a fantasy contributor. He has been in the past. He's just not looking right now. He looks rusty after missing the start of the season. What about you, Mike?
He's not a must-hold for me. I'll take Quentin Grimes over him any day. No,
great point.
Grimes is available in a ton of leagues, so no.
Great point. All right, Sarr or Keegan Murray, I'm assuming, 9-cat, 10 teams. I'm rolling with Sarr here. The blocks, he's a top 5 block guy in the league. Keegan Murray, he's a solid player. He just hasn't taken that next step yet. I think Sarr has the higher upside, and frankly, his blocks give him a higher floor too. How about you?
I agree. Murray's just too limited with all the good scorers around him.
Yeah.
So we're going to see the best of Sarr down the stretch as the Wizards continue to bench guys. So Sarr.
I would agree. And obviously it's a category league, so you're just going to take the hit in the field goal percentage. Yep. Obviously, a 7-footer center, you don't want to take the hit in the field goal percentage, but the rest of the stats should come.
Yeah.
All right, drop 2, Middleton, D. Hunter, Kelly Oubre, Trace Jackson Davis. I think Trace Jackson Davis is the easy one here. The minutes, he's back in the starting lineups, but the minutes just aren't really there. He hasn't really taken that step that we would want. There's been some production lately, but it hasn't been massive. DeAndre Hunter has been fantastic. Kelly Oubre with Paul George and these guys just not being trustworthy. He still has some value. What about you, Mike? Who do you think?
First of all, Hunter shouldn't even be in the group with these other 3 guys. He's so far ahead of them, so he's a must-hold. I would drop Jackson Davis, and Middleton is out. He can't stay healthy. He's not playing enough when he is healthy. Middleton's out.
Middleton has played 30-plus minutes only one time this season. So
See ya. And you're hurt again. I can't deal with it. Out.
Should I trade C.J. McCollum in case he is shut down? What range of players am I able to get? I mean, after that, you probably wanted to trade him after that 50-point explosion before the 5-point dud. It's really tough. I say this anytime someone asks, like, who should I try to trade for? Trading in fantasy, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, whatever, it's like poker. You're not playing your cards, you're playing the guys across from you, right? So you got to understand how your league mates value their players in order to get good value in a trade. So it's kind of hard. Do you have anybody in mind that you'd want to?
Yeah, so if you're trading McCollum, you're not going to get another scorer back, okay? You're looking to trade him to a team that needs scoring. Now, first of all, I do like the idea of trading him. Yes, establish that. So you're going to want to trade him for probably someone who's going to give you rebounds. CJ McCollum for Jared Allen, something like that. That would seem kind of fair to me if you need a big man, something like that. You're not going to get, Josh Hart or somebody crazy like that. But if you need a big man, someone in that Jared Allen range, maybe is where you start and hope you get something around there.
All right. Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's go with hooks and hoops. Is Wemby becoming unfair in fantasy? He outblocked my whole team by himself. I'm pissed. Yeah, man. The next couple of years, if you don't have that 1 or 2 pick to get Jokic or Wemby, you're probably going to be at a slight disadvantage moving forward. You just got to nail the comeback. You got to get 2 good players. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. Jermaine says, I was offered Embiid.
We did that one.
We did this one already.
Yeah, I think he reposted it.
Would you move off LaMelo at some point for fear or injury or shutdown? If so, who would you target? Again, it's hard to pick guys that you would want to target. Yes and no. LaMelo is going to give you the highest upside. You're not going to trade for someone that has a higher upside than LaMelo, right? Like his upside is a top 5 fantasy producer, but there is that risk reward. Getting shut down. I'm not really sure about like the tanking in Charlotte. I think they're going to want to see what they have with LaMelo and Brandon. I don't think that would come until like the last couple weeks of the season, and hopefully your fantasy season doesn't go until the last day of the regular season. What about you, Mike?
I like the idea of I have him in my what I consider my most important league, the FSGA league. I drafted him knowing he was an injury risk. Trey Mann's out right now. So they do have Trey Mann when the season gets going, when he's healthy towards the end of the season. The Hornets are bad. If LaMelo Ball gets any sort of a nagging injury, could he miss the last month of the season? Yep. So I'm okay with trading him. Could you get Jalen Johnson? I don't know. Probably not. Could you get Paolo Banchero for LaMelo Ball? Maybe. What do you think? Is that a range maybe? Start floating something like that out there?
I'm so high on Paolo that I would probably say no to that. But it's weird. Like, there's a lot of guys that really like LaMelo, and there's a lot of people that don't really like LaMelo. So you just got to play your league mates.
You got to go after a forward, I think.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get no one's going to trade you a guard for something like that. So you got to go forward. Got to go for a forward.
Absolutely. Do we think CJ for Kobe is gaining value?
Kobe White for me.
Yeah,
I'll take Kobe White over CJ McCollum.
You're talking to 2 Bulls fans, Anthony. Come on, man.
More certainty, Anthony. We don't even need the Bulls minute. Just go Kobe White. Let's do it. All right, Kirien, let's do a couple more.
All right. Would you trade Ayton for Emmanuel Quigley? This is interesting. Both teams not doing too hot in the standings. Ayton randomly showed up on the injury report with like a rest designation, but he still played. I think, the last couple months of the season, Donovan Klingen's going to get his moment. So I'd probably want to move off of Ayton. And I think with Quigley missing the first start of the season, this is like his first chance as like a guy on a team, right? So I think the Raptors will probably give him an extended run. And I also don't really think Darko, the head coach for the Raptors, is really a guy that's like, let's bench guys. I think if they had one win going into the last game of the season, he's throwing his starters out there and they're playing heavy minutes. So I think I'll take Quigley over Ayton. What about you, Mike?
Completely agree. The Trailblazers are the kings of the tank. We're not going to see Ayton over the last month of the season. We're barely going to see him. Much better chance Quigley plays.
All right, I got three more quick ones. Or no, two more quick ones. We already did.
Let's do two quick ones. And before we do these two quick ones, this is your chance, everybody, because the best segment in all of podcasting is coming up. So get your spouse. They're working from home in the office. Tell them to log off their Zoom call. It's not important. Get ready. It's coming up. All right, Kirien.
All right. Would you trade J-Dub for Brunson? This is a very interesting one. I think, if it kind of goes in, if you need a guard or if you need a forward, I think they're both pretty similar. I think Brunson just has the higher upside because he can and does score 50 with those 10 assists every once in a while. But if you're really desperate at forward, I think this could be a fair trade.
Very fair. I would prefer the Brunson slide slightly.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So the last one here, Day'Ron Sharp can be a stash. Hey, man, Day'Ron Sharp is one of the best per 36 per minute guys in the league. He's definitely can throw him into that equation of the Brooklyn guys we talked about later. But again, similarly to like a Jonathan Isaac, Sharp is one of these guys that we've talked. Once he gets 30 minutes, he's going to be a fantasy superstar. That hasn't happened yet. We've been talking about that for years. So maybe yes, probably not though.
You can stash him if you want, but it's going to be a dice roll.
I'm definitely not stashing
Claxton's
him.
Claxton's not playing down the stretch. Okay, yeah, he's not. No. We're not going to see Claxton down the stretch. So is Sharp going to be the main beneficiary? Probably. So I don't mind it, but I think you don't have to stash him yet. I would much rather get hot moves off players as the trade deadline approaches and guys to add off waivers that way. He's an ad maybe in like the end of February, not the beginning of January, if that makes sense.
I think that's totally fair.
And with that, we want to thank you for all of the questions. This was great. We will do this again sometime because there was a lot of great responses. Before we say goodbye, it is time for the best segment in all the podcast universe. The What Was That Stat Lines of the Week. Kirien, you, my friend, are up first, and Kirien's got some beauties. That's right, teas. Go ahead, Kirien.
I'm going crazy today. I got three stat lines of the week.
Oh, yeah.
For you guys. All right, so starting on Monday, Tim Hardaway went full LA Fitness mode, right? He scored 26 points in 33 minutes. He was 10 for 15 from the field, including 6 for 9 from deep during a 118-115 win. But he didn't record a single stat in any other category, including turnovers. It was the third time this season that Tim Hardaway has failed to record a single rebound, assist, steal, or block. That's full LA Fitness, not getting back on defense, waiting at half court, cherry picking type offense. Kind of love it, kind of hate it, but it got what was that? My next one is last Thursday, rookie Khalil Ware scored a career high 25 points, 9 of 11 from the field, 3 of 4 from deep, 4 or 5 from the free throw line, added 3 blocks and a steal. He really stepped up in Jimmy Butler's absence. We go, wow, look at this rookie. However, this kid is 7 feet tall, and the dude didn't grab a single rebound in 21 minutes of action. What is that? High school coaches across the world lost their mind. They're questioning everything. 7 feet tall, you're on the floor for 20 minutes, and you can't get 1 rebound? Absolutely insane. And then, for the second Bulls minute, maybe it's the third at this point. Who's keeping track anymore? Kobe White's second dunk of the season. He only has 2 dunks on the entire season, and his second dunk came on a huge poster of Victor Wembanyama. What was that?
Oh, that was beautiful. The hair was flowing. He talked about after the game, him and Zach LaVine said one of them had to dunk on Wembanyama. They were trying to find the right opportunity to do it. LaVine said he was jealous that Kobe White was the one to do it as opposed to him. That was an awesome dunk. The poster machine was broken. Stacey King was trying to do the poster during the broadcast. He couldn't get the telestrator to work. That was great. Now, we hinted about this guy. We talked about this a little bit when we got a question about him. What was that stat line of the week? CJ McCollum on January 3rd against the Wizards. He scored 50 points, 18 of 27 from the field, 10 of 16 from behind the arc. However, 3 rebounds and 2 assists. Not quite full Tim Hardaway Jr., but he was almost there. We love to see that. But then the wild thing is last night against plays the Timberwolves, he scored 5 points. He shot 1 of 14 from the field. Let's see. 50 points against the Wizards, 5 points against the Timberwolves. Maybe the opponents had a little bit to come into play there. But we love McCollum in fantasy. He's averaging 22.1 points, 3.7 rebounds, 3.9 assists, and 3.1 three-pointers. He is a steady contributor. 50 points, 10 three-pointers against the Wizards. What was that? Fantastic from CJ McCollum.
Been waiting for that. Needed that with all these guys injured. All right. Manila Most Wanted is asking for a bonus question.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. We aim to please.
We are a pod of the people. So I'm just going to run through these real quick.
I think he wants you to answer his question.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, all right.
We've kind of answered these before. Yes, I think drop Strus for Clowney. We talked about Strus not being great. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for guys in Brooklyn. I talked about, I don't think Darko is the guy that wants to tank, even if the front office wants to do that. I'm not too worried about Scotty Barnes, and especially quickly, I think him missing the first half of the season, they're going to want to see what they have with him. Drop Keontae for Malik Beasley. Yeah, I mean, Malik Beasley has been the better producer so far, so I think that's fair to do. Would you
Here's Manila's question. The guy. Here he is.
Manila Most Wanted.
We got you.
Would you bless trading Bam for Garland? Yeah, I think I'd rather have Garland at this point. Bam's field goal percentage dropping in a category league has been a huge storyline this season. The added 3.1 three-pointer per game hasn't been enough to offset that field goal percentage, in my opinion. And Garland is a great player on one of the best teams in the league. There's no worry about any tanking or anything going down there. And then the last question we got from Han Solo, shout out Star Wars, Chris Paul, Jalen Johnson, John Morant, or Scott Barnes, Tyler Hero, Miles Turner. Why did we save this one for last? This is making my head hurt. I don't know.
I'll take the Barnes side simply because of the injuries concerns with John Morant, and Chris Paul's 150 usually. He can't play Nikola Vucevic every night. I think that's fair, and let's end the show on there. Thank you guys for all the questions. It was a great time. Yes, thank you everyone for listening to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Kerry and I will be back next Wednesday, of course, to give you all of that information that you need to win your fantasy basketball leagues. Until then, may your fantasy team stay healthy and you bring home some victories.
Have a good one, everybody.